Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to Charlie Mike, hosted by me, Mike Buchanan. This podcast is here for you to get to know veterans and others who are either continuing their veteran mission post-service or helping us to continue our own missions. Today, we're going to be talking to Dr. Christopher Holland-Deguire. A lot to say. It's a huge name, man. A psychologist and director or program manager, program coordinator slash however many other titles that there needs to be of LGBTQ plus services at VA North Texas. So, hi.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, hey. All right, so this is going to be your camera. So if I do or say anything stupid, by all means, look into this camera. So you can just look into the crowd and say, like, why did he do that?
Right, I'll do this.
Right. Yeah. That's I call it my shame camera.
Good.
Is what I call it. So let's just jump right in. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Of course. Hi, everyone. I'm Christopher Holland-Deguire. I'm a psychologist by training. I am at the North Texas VA. On my clinical side, my specialties are PTSD, chronic pain, and insomnia. And then on my leadership or admin side, I'm the LGBTQ plus Veteran Care Coordinator for North Texas, which means any VAs from Fort Worth to Denton, down to Grand Prairie, out to Tyler, in that area. My job is if there's any resources that need to be developed, I develop the resources or allocate the resources that are kind of already in present, like to different local CBOCs or anything to that extent. Any discrimination that occurs, I jump in and I advocate for our veterans. If there's any programming that needs to be done throughout North Texas, my job and my team's job is to really dive in and kind of evaluate what's needed on each of the teams and kind of create and develop throughout. I'm also the communication director for Pride VA. It's a national ERG for LGBTQ plus employees here in VA. It's actually the first one that got developed last year, and then I was recently elected onto their board about 3 weeks ago, I want to say. And what that is it's a place to set up for LGBTQ employees that can develop whether they want to do any programming at the national level, if you want to do any mentorship, because it can be very different being an LGBTQ VA employee in all the different areas of the United States. And then also kind of if there's any advocation, if that's like your passion. So if you're listening and you're like, oh, I would love to dive into that, feel free, reach out to me on my email or go to Pride VA and check it out.
I'll leave links below. Not to your email because you don't want as many emails as you would get.
That's true. That's true.
But they can always reach out to the show's email, and I can pick and choose kind of who I give some information to.
Perfect.
But I will provide all of the links below to especially VA's LGBTQ plus services in the description box. So if you go to the description box, it will be there. I promise you. I will put it there. All right. So that's actually really cool. You do a lot. I never understand how in the world this is why veterans are always like so upset with the VA is because they're always like, well, I just wish my doctor would he just needs to do more. And I'm like, do you realize how much doctors do already? Like,
it's a lot of time management and coffee.
Right.
I should have gotten some money into Dunkin' before I started this whole process because there's a lot of Dunkin' involved.
Yeah, I always sit there and try to remind veterans when they're like, oh, we're getting treated like cattle at the VA. I'm like, dude, you should see how they treat their doctors. Like they're doing all sorts of things. It's like the cow is like walking on a treadmill while getting milked while getting ready to be slaughtered. Yeah. Like it's just doing everything and eating grass all at the same time.
Right.
Like
I will say there is
crazy.
Working at the VA as a psychologist, there's a lot of different hats you wear. Yeah. I will say I do have a passion for it, so it doesn't seem like work all the time. I get to do stuff like this and I get to come out and meet interesting people. Specifically when I'm in the LGBTQ VCC realm, it's really nice to kind of see that benefit. So it works really well, but there is a lot of time management for sure involved.
Well, hats off to you. All right, let's get into it. What LGBTQ services okay, tongue twister. What LGBTQ services does the VA currently offer?
So that can be a loaded question. So
I know.
Right.
I know. I literally wrote it because it's a loaded question.
Right. So there's a few different ways you can kind of look at our services here. So here in North Texas, I'll give that perspective, but a lot of it's rolled down from our national LGBTQ program. Amazing providers over there that are doing some really amazing work. Here in North Texas, we look at it from a COPE model. It's something we kind of created in-house from one of our LGBTQ postdocs last year. They kind of revamped it. So we look at LGBTQ programming from, like I was saying, the COPE model, C being clinical care. So we go in and we look at clinical care from the mental health side as well as the medical side. From the mental health side, we're constantly creating different groups. We're training a lot of our different individuals so they can get really specialized care. On the medical side, we're constantly updating and changing and trying to speed up the care. A lot of times, historically, the biggest difficulty with VA is access to care for these veterans. So we're constantly trying to make VA North Texas that one-stop shop, rather than a lot of times veterans can get shifted to one team, to another team, to another team, to another team, and it can just take a long time before you see your provider.
Especially with new services.
Right, exactly.
Especially with new services.
Yeah, so we've been focusing on that a lot. And then on the O out of COPE is the outreach side, so we're focusing on not just community outreach, we're also intra-hospital outreach. North Texas is the second biggest VA in the country, so it's big. It's pretty big.
I always say it's the first.
Right. Hey.
I mean, it's funny because it's always a toss up between is it the second or is it the biggest?
Right. Hey.
It's usually between us and GLA.
Right? Yeah, so. Right. But with the outreach side, we want to make sure that we're letting our community know that we have all these different things, specifically with LGBTQ resources and program, because it's constantly developing. I tell all of my veterans that a year ago we were living in like 2003. That was kind of our vibe. But now we're probably chilling 2012. We're not at 2021 yet, but we're making a lot of really amazing strides here in VA overall for our LGBTQ veterans, so it's really nice there. Intra-hospital, we want to connect it so that our veterans aren't getting shifted back and forth. We're trying to create a more streamlined process for all of our veterans.
I mean, breaking silos.
Right, exactly. Like, we're all in this together, right?
Yeah.
And then on the programming side, we are looking at like short-term goals as well as long-term. So on the short-term goals, there's a lot of really cool trainings we're creating, which we'll talk about kind of later, as well as looking at different resources we can develop within North Texas. We also look at the long-term side of it. On the long-term side of it, we have a 5-year plan as well as a 10-year plan. Our goal is, like I was saying earlier, to be that one-stop shop. I did a lot of my training up in Boston for the LGBTQ population, and I went up there and I was like, wow, okay. So we need to change some stuff in Texas. So I came back and that was kind of my goal, looking at some of those clinics up there, and they're absolutely amazing. I'm using that as kind of like the guiding force for North Texas.
Good luck.
Right. It's a process.
I mean, once
sure.
you've been to one VA, you've been to one VA. That's what we always tell everybody.
Very true.
Because it just depends on the size of the VA, really. Yeah. I mean, I commend anyone who wants to change processes for the betterment of healthcare for veterans, right. By all means. Yeah. It's just very difficult at such a large VA. Like, it's second or first, doesn't matter. Right. It's big. Right. I mean, like, our budget was huge last year. It was like $2 billion. I mean, it was like something stupid big. Yeah. Right. And so, like, that is massive. It's massive. And so how do you make such a big change in that? But I think that's really cool. I think that it's great that you have really kind of taken this on for yourself. Right. From whoever was, people that were just passing the torch, basically. Right. But it's nice. I think that you're right. I think it is about 2012 mentality. Yeah. But at least the VA is moving forward. And I keep trying to remind veterans of that, is that the VA may not be there right now all the way, right? But at least they're learning from their mistakes. Yes, 100%. And at least that they're learning that they need to be more open, and that they need to be more honest with veterans, right. And that processes need to change. And there's things like whole health that are proof of that. There's LGBTQ services that are proof of that. Yeah,
women's services now too as well.
Yes, exactly, right? Yeah, for women veterans. I mean, there's all sorts of proof that the VA is constantly moving forward. Yep. And so, speaking of moving forward, let's talk about some of the like trans services, and also let's talk about the gender affirming surgeries, because I know that's going to be huge. I know that the VA just made an official statement January 14th, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure I remember that. January 14th this year, so this month, on what the whole process is going to look like. But let's just talk about it from like, what is our process here going to look like, and then let's talk like kind of nationally, right? What does that mean? Where does that plug us in for national?
Yeah, of course. So I'll dive into kind of what we have now, and then I'll circle back around to the gender affirming surgery towards the end. So currently, VA can do anything pre or post surgery, which means any social transition that's needed, we can really help with. Social transitioning means a person's living according to their life. They're in the society. They're kind of living their best life. They're living as their true self, which is a huge win for these veterans. From VA's perspective, our goal is to help every step of the way with that. We can do any prosthetics that's needed, any binders, shapewear, anything to that extent. VA's goal is to help with that. We can do any audiology support, so we can do vocal training if their internal vocal expression doesn't match their external expression. The amazing people in audiology, they come in and they do stuff amazingly. I will say they're way smarter than I am, and that's okay. We also have HRTs, so they can do any form of an HRT. We can do the letters of support all within house, so that is a one-stop shop for us. So we're not making them go into the community letter to get the HRTs here. We have an amazing...
What's an HRT?
Hormone replacement therapy. So
okay.
Those are when your internal hormone balance doesn't match your external expression. We balance it out for you.
Okay.
We make it so that it kind of matches. When it comes to any other social, if there's like any mental health components that you're needing just support, having that guidance with coming out as a gender diverse individual, it can be difficult. It's very different. It's a very different process than coming out as a sexual minority individual. So we want to have that support. We have group-based therapies as well as individual-based to kind of give that guidance. On the medical side, I've already mentioned the HRT process, so we can do that already for you. And then we can do anything on the pre-post. So what that kind of really means is if a veteran's going into the community to get their specific surgery that they want to get done, and the surgeon says, hey, you need to have 130 units of electrolysis. The VA's job is to give them those electrolysis units. Here in North Texas, we just got an electrolysis provider through a VCA, which is like an agreement. And now we can do that as quick as a consult. So that's a really huge win for us, and I'm really excited about that. It was a process, but I'm excited that the process is up and going. On the post side, so if a veteran goes and get their surgery to live according to their best life, and they're having a lot of complications, they're noticing certain pains, or they're noticing certain things that doesn't seem correct, the VA's job and duty is to be there for that veteran, give them the care, give them the post-operative care, be there to support that individual. Like you were mentioning, within the next year and a half, gender-affirming surgeries is going to be within the VA's realm as well, which is what that's really meaning is any gender-affirming surgeries that the veteran needs to live according to their true self, the VA will be covering. What that kind of looks like national is still fine-tuning. Here in North Texas, I will say this is probably a Chris issue, but I don't like to just sit, and I don't like to tell people I don't know the answer. So
you don't like to be ready, fire, aim?
No,
because that's how the VA typically operates: is ready, fire, and then aim.
See, no, I'm like I would say like a sniper in the process.
Yeah.
I like to, I like to sit.
You like to get there way early. Yeah.
Yes, be prepared. So what we're doing here in North Texas, we have a 4-step process. Our first step was getting all of that pre-post care set up, and which we're doing a really good job of that already. With, like I was saying, with the electrolysis provider and stuff to that extent. Our next step is to get connected with a surgery center of excellence. What that really looks like is being paired with a surgeon that has really intense specialized training within gender-affirming surgeries. I've heard a lot of horror stories that veterans have gone into the community and they've had their surgeries, and then as they're coming through, one of the surgeons are like, oh, that was my first time ever doing that.
Yeah, that'd be kind of scary.
Right.
I mean, for anybody, like even if you went in for like a knee surgery and they're like, oh, it's the first time I've ever been inside of a knee, you'd be like,
terrifying, right? Terrifying.
Well,
so
what do I say about that?
Our goal is to get paired with the center that the moment National says we're good to go, we already have an agreement with them, so we can just start putting consults in. The really cool thing about that is since we're starting early on, it's not just about getting the surgeon that has the highest qualifications. As we know, the veteran population has a lot of different identities, specifically the LGBTQ veteran population. So we want a surgeon that kind of hits all of those boxes, someone that can kind of be there for the veteran experience, be there for the LGBTQ plus experience, be there with the expertise. So we're being very nitpicky on who we're really connecting with. I'm a big person that if I'm talking to my veterans and I'm saying I support this, I'm giving them my name that, hey, that's a me. The moment I lose my credibility on my name, That's the biggest loss for me. So it's constantly getting vetted.
Preach.
Yeah, it's
I mean, like, right? Because
right.
I think higher ups in the VA don't even understand that, because like half the time that they don't even have to worry about the consequences of anything that they do. But like those of us that are like on this ground level who are like really trying to make these community, you know, I guess connections and like maintain them. Your word is your bond.
Yeah.
Like your name is your bond. Like,
especially with the LGBTQ population. If you think about like historically, VA and military,
it's been distrust.
It's not been the best component.
Large distrust.
I will say the first, even still now, I'm still developing a name for myself in that community, and I'm still developing that trust. Losing trust for my veterans is one of my biggest fears associated with this position and everything to that extent. So we're very intense with that. The third step and fourth step are the more exciting steps. That is getting everything more intra-house, training more providers on the evaluations to get it all done in letter writing, and then diving into actually getting surgeons trained here in North Texas so that it can be just like any other surgery. Like you were saying, knee surgery, right? That's a quick consult. You go to day surgery, you walk out, and it's good to go. There'll be a few more steps.
Of course.
My goal is it to be all in North Texas, right? They don't need to be driving to here to do this, to talk to that provider, to that. With that kind of like disjointed clinical care, there's so many chances to drop the ball, and I don't want any of my veterans to fall through the cracks.
Yeah, it's smart. The VA shouldn't trust. Honestly, I know that we kind of have to now because of the Mission Act. But, you know, we do give some world-class healthcare, and I know we need help because I know we have a lot of veterans that we have to serve, and I get that, and I get the community partners, and I love the community partners that help us with our overflows and provide, you know, great services. But the VA does it really good, when they do something, they typically do it great. Yeah, you know, especially when it comes to surgeries or any kinds of you know, medical procedures like that. We do things great.
Yeah, I was actually, when I was a psychology resident here, I've actually been at the North Texas VA for a while. They can't get rid of me. I'm here forever. But I was actually in the SCI unit, and they had a research study going on looking at getting individuals back to walking with an exoskeleton, and if the veteran goes through that process, they get to keep the exoskeleton.
Yes.
And I was like, oh wow, it was my first idea of like diving into the VA is a different level. It might be slower, don't get me wrong, it can be snail pace, but once it's going, you're connected to the resources, it's an amazing place to be.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that program. That's when I was a peer support specialist just starting out in Vegas. Yeah. I was walking through the halls, and I saw this guy walking down the hall in this exoskeleton, and I said, what is this? Yeah. And I was fascinated. And they said, oh, well, he was in a wheelchair this morning, but now he's walking around like you and I. And I said, oh, I got to be a part of this. Yeah. And so I actually was in Vegas. I actually got to be a part of it for a little bit. And I got to see one of the veterans use that machine to go to his daughter's wedding and be able to actually stand up to dance with her. And she had no idea that he was ever going to be able to stand up, because like we had him kind of like hidden in the back and like in the whole exoskeleton, and he got to like stand up, and it was, and like look her in the eye for like the first time ever.
Right. And that's where I like,
it changes lives.
Yes, it changes lives. And I tend to be kind of a nerd. Y'all probably learn this as we're talking, but that's kind of my vibe, right? Like creating the new stuff and new programming is kind of where I want to sit and I want to thrive. So that's where I was like, and I'm staying in VA.
Well, great. Okay, so because you were going to get pressed, we got a lot to talk about. We do. Honestly, you're probably going to have to come on again and again and again and again. But all right, so let's talk about this. What are some major hurdles for the program? And how do you think that we're tackling those opportunities for change? Do you like how I use that? Opportunities for change.
I love that. Yes.
They're not problems. They're challenges.
It's just a chance to kind of learn and find a new way. So a few different things here in North Texas is, one, if we look at like the gender affirming surgery side of it, it's difficult to find these individuals. I was talking to one of our providers that we're vetting right now, and they were saying there's roughly like 30 to 40 providers in the country that can do these surgeries. So finding the support and finding like the clinical resources is difficult. The other side of it is, I like to talk about it as like a historical view, right? VA and the military in general has historically been really bad for our LGBTQ veterans, and I don't want to minimize that. I want to be aware of that and learn from those experiences. But what comes with that, rightfully so, is a level of distrust of the VA. Knowing what they've been through, all of those different experiences, being overseas, having to hide pieces of your identity, or X, Y, and Z can happen, right? That's a different level of distrust, right? If I become the true me, then I lose everything. Also, at the same time, as I need to be over in wherever they're Germany or Iraq, wherever they're at, that can really ingrain a lot of distrust. So that's a big thing we're battling right now, rightfully so. And I think the biggest way to do that is one thing. I normally have a little thing with all these like pins. I tend to be fashionable. But I used to have these pins that have like rainbows on them. And what it is when I train individuals, last year we trained 264 mental health providers on LGBTQ baseline services, like how to do pronouns, name and use, how to ask about partners and stuff like that. We give them a pin. And if you see a provider with that pin in North Texas, you know that person was trained by me. I vetted that individual, and that's a safe person to talk to. They might not be able to help you with your bump toe or help you with the pain in your neck, but they know how to get you the resources in a safe manner. So that's one way we've been doing it here in North Texas, creating those little visual acuities to help with it. Other things we've been doing is trying to just create a safe space. As you kind of walk through North Texas, it's really big. I get lost all the time on the way to get
it's huge.
The Dickie's barbecue. It's a vibe. It's delicious.
It's
with the popcorn. But all of that, we wanted to start putting posters up places and letting people know that, hey, this is an area that we take pride in. We take pride in working with our LGBTQ veterans. Another thing that is a little more difficult to talk about, that people don't want to talk about, that we're across the field itself, not just here in North Texas, not just in VA, is those internal biases that's coming around for LGBTQ specific individuals. And being in Texas, it comes up a lot.
Well, not just in Texas.
Yeah,
I mean, just in the military in general.
Yeah.
I mean, like you in the military, we were just kind of raised up in the Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Majority of us, at least nowadays, majority of us that are out and, disabled or retired or whatever you want to call it, we grew up in that. Yeah. And so, there's tons of biases.
Right.
Tons.
Yeah. I think that's the big thing too, especially if you look at like military culture, right? If you follow these certain steps, you go up rank, you succeed, you do better. Now we're sitting post, right? Now you're sitting with individuals that those internal biases can be ingrained. I'm a big person about understanding that everyone has a bias. I have my own biases. It's normal to have biases. One of my nerd out moments is like the brain. Your brain couldn't process all the stuff coming in if you didn't have biases.
1,000%.
If you didn't have
1,000%,
you would just be kind of overwhelmed.
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah. So our biases are okay. It's when you don't know what to do with those feelings and thoughts and stuff like that becomes problematic for our veterans.
It does. Yeah, so that's great. I'm so glad that you brought that up. You're absolutely right. Everyone has their biases. Yeah. I have my own biases about a lot of different things. All of us in the military know what a bias feels like, so no one can say that they don't, because even us that were combat, right? Like we used to talk about people who were non-combat. We used to call them pogues, right? Or people other than grunts.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So we used to look down on them and be like, "Don't talk to me. You're a pogue."
Right.
Right. And it's like, but it's a bias. It's we think that you sit on a chair and do absolutely nothing all day long while we get shot at all day and have to live in the mud and the muck, and I have to poop in a can and I have to stir it with diesel, right? And so like you don't understand what that life is like. Okay, so don't talk to me, right? So like, but like it gets almost it gets angry. Like you almost get angry about your bias if you let them take you over, right?
Yeah.
You know, I try to remind veterans that anybody who wore the uniform did something for us.
Yeah,
okay.
100%.
And I know I didn't think that way when I was in service, because you're so brainwashed to just love what you do.
Yeah.
Like if you're combat, you're brainwashed to love that combat world. Right. Anyone who's not in it isn't even worthy of talking to you.
Right.
Okay. But that's not true. Every person is a necessary part of the working cog and the working wheel that is the military.
Yeah.
Everyone from getting you bombs or bullets or beans. That's what we always used to say. It's supply, right? Bombs, bullets, and beans. And so it takes an entire village to do that. And veterans who are LGBTQ, they wore the damn uniform. Right? They deserve the same services that we deserve.
Yeah.
Okay? I mean, if you serve honorably, you served honorably. I don't really care who you like or what you love. Or I mean, I even told like some of my friends, I'm like, dude, I don't even care if you like marry a car, dude. Like I don't care.
Right.
I care that you wore the uniform, you served honorably, you defended America's freedom, like you did your job.
Right.
And now you get what you deserve, right? Yeah. You get what you deserve, which is services from the VA. That's what you deserve. Right. You earned it.
Right. I think you make a really good point, kind of looking at the veteran experience is its own unique experience, right? But looking at it from like, I look at like sexual orientation as like who you like, right? Like those different components. And then like gender identity is who you are. And I think when you look at those two different things, we're all veterans, right? Having those internal biases. I'm just disclosure, I am not a veteran. I wasn't lucky enough to be a veteran.
It's okay, we couldn't tell.
Right. But
you're very clean cut. If you're a veteran, you'd be a little less clean cut.
That's okay, right? But a lot of times those biases are just ingrained in our life, right?
Sure.
And I think the biggest thing is like one, noticing that biases and then being able to set up a place to be safe around it. So one of the things we're doing here in North Texas.
Yeah, you're getting into this. Good. I'm glad.
Yeah, one of the things we're doing here in North Texas is two main-fold. Once a month, we have a consult meeting where people can just come and you can ask those questions. All of our providers have access to this consult meeting where they can come, they can ask clinical questions. For example, like let's say a transgender individual also has PTSD and you're doing an exposure-based therapy, right? And a big notion of exposure-based therapy is going out into the community and exposing, right? Starting to get that habituation and stuff like that. But what if you're worried that you send them into an area for increased misgendering, right? It might not be a safe area. This is a place where you can come and you can ask those questions, as well as a place you can come and you can ask those questions that you just don't understand, right?
Or the biases.
Right.
Right? Because like, oh man, I had to explain this to my kids the other day when we were at the dinner table because I'm like, okay, it's okay to have a bias. A bias just means that you have a misunderstanding or you don't know enough information yet, right? You don't know enough information to make a knowledgeable decision about what it is that you like, what you don't like, what you believe, what you don't believe, right? So yeah, it's really about misinformation or not having enough. So either being ignorant or being ill-informed, right? So it's like the difference between the two. I love that there's, so you're going to talk about the owning our biases. I love that idea. It's good.
We did, the monthly thing's already in place. And from there, we started to learn that we are making a lot of changes here in North Texas. And it can be uncomfortable for a lot of the veterans or the employees specifically.
For everyone.
Yeah, because it's different. It's new. It's novel. I got a lot. It's not the VA way. And I was like, well, it's the new VA way. So here we go. Let's adapt and let's run it. But what we're doing is we're creating a biasy training. And what that is, it's called Understanding Your Biases. And what it is a safe place for people to come and they can just have those questions. They can understand where their biases are coming from. Because like you were saying, some people don't even understand they have those biases.
Or would never ask the question.
Like, because they're scared, right?
Yeah, who's gonna ask that? Because, you know, like it's very scary sometimes to be able to sit down with someone because you don't know who's going to be level-headed about something or not.
Yeah.
I mean, because everyone is passionate about who they are, right? And rightly they should be.
Right.
But it's like, imagine like if you were like, have you ever killed anybody?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because like maybe you just want to know, right? But you don't know if I'm going to be like, I can't believe you asked me that question.
Right.
Why would you ask me that question? I'm done with this conversation. Like, like you don't know how I'm going to react to that.
100%.
You don't know.
100%.
But if you could be in a safe place to where you could be able to answer questions like that, or at least ask questions like that, and then I can respond like, I'll answer your question, but not everybody else will. And here's why.
Yeah.
Then you'll know.
I agree. And I think also it helps with like that veteran's experience, right? Like let's say so that person comes in, they're asking you about how many deaths you've had. You become that almost like subject matter expert of the whole veteran experience. And that's not fair to put on our veterans, right?
No.
Let's say a lesbian veteran comes in and they're at Women's Health and the provider's like, so is this true? That can be really alarming, right, for our veterans. Rather, this is a safe place where that provider can come and ask those questions rather than putting it on the onus of the veteran to be the token individual to explain all of the culture. That's not fair. They're there to get their mental health or their medical clinical care done.
In the military, we call them barracks lawyers. That's our terminology for someone who becomes the token knowledgeable one, like almost like our little Yodas. Because like everyone will go like to them and they'll be like, yeah, tell me about how this works, you know, and then they'll say it and they could be totally full of crap.
Right. That's only one experience.
It's one experience.
One person's
experience. Or
experience.
it's one story that person heard and it could be totally full. They could be totally full of it. It happens all the time, even in outreach when we go and talk to veterans about the VA, just VA services. They're like, I heard that the VA doesn't allow people who were in the Coast Guard. And I'm like, where did you hear that from?
Right.
Like, like it's like if someone was like, oh, I was in the Navy, I'm not eligible for VA services. Who said that?
Right.
Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. And I think that also helps with kind of some of that like word of mouth that kind of goes through, like specifically with VA, right?
Instead of playing the telephone game?
Yes. Instead of that, you can get it that where the provider can come and they can get that educated support. And it's really cool too because they get the research supporting it as well. So it helps the provider get the skills to work with these veterans as well as get the research behind it so they can get like their own internal biases checked, as well as it helps our veterans in the long run because they deserve to get their clinical care like any veteran.
I love the idea. I think it's such a great idea to have a safe space for everyone, right? I understand that, LGBTQ services are really kind of breaking the mold right now. And, we're really, in America in general, we're really trying to break that mold. Right. But it's still important to think about every side of an issue, right? 100%. Every side of it, not just one side who's trying to break the mold, but there's other sides that are in that wake too that need to be either brought along or pushed even further away, right? And so, but you can't push someone away if they're ill-informed. And I think a majority of people who just don't understand, they just don't understand. They don't. And they want to ask questions, but they just don't know. They don't have that safe place to ask questions. So I love the idea. I love it so much. We got to try to, we're running late on time.
I know I can talk about this stuff for hours. I know,
so can I.
We're going to put that one on me.
So just answer me real quick, as quickly as you can. How, if someone identifies as LGBTQ plus and they're a veteran and let's say that they want to try to get into services, how would they, not just here at this VA, but just everywhere? Like what's the best way possible for them to get connected to services? Yeah,
so that's actually a really great question. So National VA programming has done an absolutely amazing job of making that more streamlined. So if you go to their website you can go LGBTQ VA.
I'll offer it below.
Yeah, and then you can just follow that link. You can actually go by state by your VA, and you'll find a version of me, an LGBTQ VCC. Our job, we do have a portion of our time focused on helping you get connected. Another way you can do it is if you're doing like if you're with your PCP or if you're with your provider, just letting them know, hey, can you get me connected to the LGBTQ VCC? They should have a resource for you. But yeah, a lot of those things that can really help if you're an LGBTQ employee, but also a veteran at the same time, because we know a lot of those identities blend. Joining Pride VA is another way you can kind of do it, because then they're going to help you connect with different resources across the board, as well as support. But yeah, there's a lot of really cool things online to help you get connected. So if I had to say anything to my LGBTQ veterans that might be watching, we are here for you. We're nowhere near perfect. We're taking our steps to get there. Find your LGBTQ VCC for support. And
advocate.
Yeah.
By good God, advocate.
Right.
You have to advocate. Like if someone goes, I don't know what a VCC is, and then they just bypass your question.
Right.
Do not let them bypass your question.
Yeah, no.
For the love of God.
Yeah, it's within your 100% right to have that individual. And every major medical center will have an LGBTQ VCC.
Okay, stop. Do not let them bypass your question. No. I hate watching veterans do that to themselves, right? Where they're just like, oh, well, he had no idea what it is, so maybe it just doesn't exist. It exists.
Right.
It exists. Yeah. Okay, go find it. Do your due diligence and figure it out. Yeah. And because once you figure it out, then you can tell anyone else that you know about the same services, and it helps everyone.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was my 2 cents.
Yeah. Hey.
I'm so big on advocation.
Yeah.
Because the VA could be so much better, and it will be better as soon as we start advocating. Yeah. It took Vietnam veterans to get this far. So
right. Yeah.
Thank you, Vietnam veterans, for being loud.
Yeah.
And
starting the
and
train,
impatient.
Right? Riding the wave through, yeah.
Exactly. All right, well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for being on the show. That's it. That's all we got. That's all we got for you.
Bye.
That's all we got. All right, so thank you again for coming on to the show and about how you're helping our LGBTQ veterans. I really do appreciate it, and I'm sure that they do too. All right, so that's it. That's all we have for you. Make sure to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, etc. at #VA North Texas or at Charlie Mike VA if you're looking for us on YouTube. Also, please like, subscribe, and please comment below. That's kind of how the algorithm works. And listen, if no matter how bad things seem to be, just remember Charlie Mike. At least I got something left to stand for. Hell yeah!